Hi, parents. I have a collection of games for all ages for parents to play at home, Montessori homeschool, beginning with the simple assurance that I'm offering them not with the feeling that your kids are going to fall behind academically. The great gift, I believe, and most people do too, of a Montessori education is the cultivation of a lifelong and abiding love and learning that will be untouched by our pandemic home situation. These are offered because one of the great gifts of working with kids, living with kids, especially the very young, is that they're so motivated and eager and tireless. And so being at home is partly a challenge of just keeping them entertained. So I hope these offer some ideas for you and also some real opportunities for you to see how well your kids learn and move. For all of these games, the supply list is super simple. A pen or a pencil, one will do, a pair of scissors, like this, and label paper, about like this. There's lots of room for what you like. And sometimes Scotch tape is fun for the game too. At school, when we play these games, teachers write in cursive, and so do the kids. But most adults have long forgotten how, well, cursive, most of us have almost forgotten how to hold a pencil. So print is absolutely fine because the written word is always in print, so kids should be getting used to that. That's not a problem. If the whole thing, pencil holding thing is overwhelming to you, it's also okay to print labels. If you have a computer that has a printer at home, you can do that. The only detail on that that will be helpful for you at home is that you would want to choose a script that has an A. I printed some out for you here, you can see, like in hat there. You want to have an A that looks like a traditional school A and not the one that is squirrely that confuses kids. And you want to use a big, like 24, 28, and also bold if you're going to print. Handwriting makes it a little bit easier because you can be a little fluid and you don't have to really plan in advance. But if handwriting is not something that you want to mess with, the printer works just as well. The other thing that you need, and here's where the fun starts, you can play this game a million different ways, so try one, and if it's fun, do it again or change it or make it harder or make it easier according to how things go with your child. You need a collection of objects that's limited in either number or space. So you could, well, here's the example. If you've been in your child's primary classroom at school, our classrooms, most of us have either a story house, that's what I have, looks like a dollhouse, or a farm. Miss Chisty has a farm. You might have at your home a Barbie dream house or a Fisher-Price airport, or many of the kids build Lego scenes that have emergency vehicles or jungle scenes or zoos or something like that. So any of those will work. You could also just limit your activity to a room in your house. So for example, you could play it in your kitchen or in your child's bedroom, or if you have a playroom, or you could have, like if you have an art area, you could play with your art area. So the only limitation would be that you would want it to be some parameters, a few objects or a limited space, so that you're not making it overwhelming at the beginning. One of the most enjoyable ways for kids, which keeps them super active, is to give them a bag or a box or a basket, something, or maybe perhaps you could empty the backpack that they're accustomed to carrying to school and invite them to go find 5 or 6 or 7 of their favorite toys or their favorite things in your home and put them in the bag or the backpack or whatever you have. So you could have a sword or a jet or a doll or crayons or a pen or teddy bear, Nerf gun. Nobody likes guns except gun is phonetic, so that's actually kind of a good one. Book, all of those things. That's a fun way to play this game. Or this used to be the best way to play, but most of us don't print photos anymore. So if you have a printer at home that will allow you to print a small collection of familiar faces, like brothers and sisters, a grandma and grandpa, a pet, the neighbor, a mom or a dad, or all of them, if you can print small photos and cut them out and put them into an envelope or a box, that would work. Or, you know, once we get out of being at home, you could send it to Walgreens. It's pretty cheap to print pictures. Or my last idea, you can probably come up with others at home. If you play the matching game at home, the memory game, many of the matching game, the little tiles that we use, you could just take out 5 or 6 of the pictures from that game and return them to the game when you're done, but take them out and put them in a separate spot to play the game. So for the youngest kids, the way that you play the game is you just write a label. For example, you might write bed, and then you would just read it to your child, sounding it out as if you were beginning to learn how to read. So you'd say, b-ed. This says bed. You take this and put it on the bed. And then you allowed your child to scamper off and put it on the bed. And then you could write hat, hat. Perhaps if you sound it out slowly, your child could blend, or perhaps you need to do the whole job, and all that they're doing is running and putting the label on the object that you've identified. You want to aim for things that are very simple, 3-letter words that are spelled the way that they sound as much as you're able. But you're doing the reading and they're doing the running. So the purpose of the game is for them to get a little movement in their day, have a little interaction with you, and to begin to get a more sensorial kind of understanding that the written read word is a mode of communication. It is an abstract that goes with a concrete. If you have a child who's 4.5 or older, and you know from your observation or from your conversation with your child's teacher that they're a young reader, they're beginning to read, you could make it a little bit more challenging. So that would be when you might want to get out the Barbie Dream House, or a collection of pictures of family members, or the Fisher-Price Airport, something like that. And you would write, either you could print out prepared labels at the beginning of your day before your workday starts, or if you have time on a break in the day, you could write the labels by hand and allow your child to cut them out after you write. And then he or she sounds out and puts the word to the object. So if you can picture it, you would have, for example, in front of you, if you collected the objects in a backpack, you might have a jet and a sword and a Nerf gun and a truck. And you're going to write truck and let your child cut it out and put it in front of the truck. When you're done, you can save the labels, mix them up, and your child can play as long as he or she wants. The great thing about this game is that you're not asking your child to read any of the words in the language. So if you write something that really, in terms of their skill development, their decoding abilities, it's beyond them, they'll probably figure it out anyway, because if they know the initial consonant, they definitely know the objects that they collected. And so it's an added level of challenge, but it's also an added level of confidence building, because kids get the feeling that they can read things that you might feel like, I don't know if you can really read that or not, but they get it because it's a limited number of objects. The limit that I would put on that is to not make it feel like a test. If kids know a sound, or for example, if it's SH and it's sh, if they're familiar with that and have had enough exposure to it, they'll usually say it very quickly. If they don't know it, it usually makes them feel yucky if you sit and wait and say something like, you know that. Well, they may, but it didn't come to their mind at that moment. So the best way to keep the game alive and fun is to just offer it. If they don't get it quickly, just give it to them so that you can keep the game going. One of the goals of activities like this is to make repetition a good idea. So if it's fun and an opportunity to engage with you in a way that feels good, they're more likely to want to do it again. If you have somebody, if that's easy for your child, you know, because your child is starting to read books, or because you just had a conference and your child's teacher told you, if your child is reading well, you can expand your horizons. So you could look into the backyard and write something like tree, E, that's a phonogram, or you could write grass, or you could write fort. I know one of my students is building a fantastic fort in his basement. Or if your child is working on handwriting at school, you could switch it so that your child writes labels for you. It's a great opportunity when we play this at school for kids to understand in a kind of impactful, it matters to them that the game is successful, and so their handwriting has to be clear. If you can't read it, they'll know that they need to work harder on their handwriting, right? So perhaps they could write some labels for you, and you ask them, so that you can be successful, to tell them what room you're in, or perhaps you want to go collect the objects or something like that, so that you can try hard to read the things that they've selected. Another way to up the challenge level, if writing objects in exclusion is pretty easy, you know from your observations at school that kids also add adjectives. So if you're working with a Barbie dream house, you might write the soft pink bed or the cozy blue beanbag chair, something. You know, adding adjectives and descriptive things to it. Kids will surprise you with the words that they come up with. Another way to make it fun and engaging and to expand it a little bit, if you have an older brother or sister, especially somebody who's in elementary school and might remember this phase of learning, you can ask them to do the writing so that they can have a little fun together. The grand finale of this game, which is super fun, is to play a scavenger hunt. That's usually for older kids, but of course, all of you smart parents at home can tweak it. And Google is a good help. Google has lots of good scavenger hunts, and there's also a board game called Scavenger Hunt. If you have an older sibling, even perhaps a high school student in your family, somebody who likes comic books or detective novels, the high school people in my family really enjoy thinking up clever ways to leave clues all over a limited space. One of the funnest ways to end the game, of course, is to have the last grand finale clue be found in the pages of a really good book. That's a lot of fun. Last assurance, if you don't have time because you're working so hard to keep your own career alive, don't worry. If you try this game and it's a total flop because your siblings compete and the person who doesn't read as well feels yucky because somebody else reads better, it's okay, that we're coming back to school and we'll take care of it at school. And we always struggle, teachers, to communicate this message effectively, so I'm going to try virtually. We have lots of kids who are super motivated, eager, inquisitive, and start reading before they're 4. And we have lots of super smart, curious, headed for success kids who couldn't care less. And we have to do a little bit more work, but they're going to be just as successful. If you have somebody who's more motivated by the backyard than by the written word, go to the backyard and don't worry about it. If you really want to play this game because you're trapped inside and it's raining, don't call it a reading game. I would call it a good game with scotch tape and scissors, because those are winners. Everybody likes to stick scotch tape on something. Watch out for the dog if you label the dog. So I hope that's helpful for you. I'd love to see photos. I'd love to have your feedback. So we all have school emails now. Mrs. Rogers, MRS.Rogers, all lowercase, at wheatonmontessori.org. I'd love to know if any of these games are successful. And if they are, I'll try to think of some more. Enjoy.